And what's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of The Spiritual Word. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. And before I start these, I like to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only, and to always do your own research, to come to your own conclusions, to have your own answers, and I believe in your ability to be your own person. So with that being said, if you're new, thanks for tuning in and tapping in. If you're a returning baby, thanks for being here. I call my viewership or my listenership my babies because I find that to be an endearing term. And as my returning babies know, we're reading Start Where You Are by Pema Chodron. And we're on 19. There's only 22 chapters left, so I think I'm going to just knock them all out right now. Just so that we can get through this book. So this is going to be a very long episode, and if you're not ready for that, or if you don't want to listen to this, that's fine. But I am going to try to take my time so that it sounds clear. Anyways, I have an audio version of the podcast anywhere you can find audio podcasts, and I have a video version of the podcast on YouTube. They're both named The Spiritual Word. I'm your host, Jackie. I upload Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and if science, psychology, spirituality, self-help, and philosophy are things that you're interested in, then I recommend subbing or following whatever platform you're finding me on. So let's get this on the go. Chapter 19, Communication from the Heart. Let's continue with the exploration of compassionate action. We have a strong tendency to distance ourselves from our experience because it hurts. The Dharma provides encouragement to move closer to that experience. Although there are a lot of words that could be used to explain compassionate action, I'd like to stress the word that is communication, in particular communication from the heart. All activities should be done with one intention. That one intention is to awaken bodhicitta, to awaken the heart. We could say that all activities should be done with the intention of communicating. This practical suggestion. This is a practical suggestion. All activities should be done with one intention. The intention of speaking so that other people can hear you, rather than using your words to cause the barrier to go up and the ears to close. In this process, we also learn how to listen and how to look. There is an extremely pointed slogan that goes, all activities should be done with one intention. Always meditate on whatever provokes resentment. Instead of the resentment being the obstacle, it's a reminder. Feeling irritated, restless, afraid, hopeless is a reminder to listen more carefully. It is a reminder to stop talking, watch, and listen. It's a reminder to use the Togolin practice to allow some space. For example, you hate a person who's standing in front of you. You just want to help a hungry person get food. Then you find yourself talking to the enemy, a bureaucrat, a politician then. All you do is get more and more angry with them, and so nothing happens. That you grow more stubborn as you grow more furious and polarized, and the sense of huge me versus them increases. When we feel resentment, the words that we speak, the actions that we perform, are the thoughts that we aren't going to produce the results that we're hoping for. Beyond that, they're so aggressive that we're not actually adding any peace and harmony to the world. Where am I? Resentment becomes a reminder not to feel so bad about others, but to open further the pain and awakenness. But open further to the pain and to the awakenness. If we really want to communicate, we can give up all. We have to give up knowing what to do. When it comes to our agendas, they only block us from seeing the person in front of us. It's best to drop our 5-year plans and accept the awkward, sinking feeling that we're entering a situation naked. We don't know what will happen next or what we'll do. The slogan, keep 3 inseparables, is saying Your action, your speech, your thoughts should be inseparable from this yearning to communicate from the heart. Everything everything you say can either polarize the situation and convince you how separate you are. On the other hand, everything you say or do and think can support your desire to communicate and move closer and step out of the myth of isolation and separateness that you're caught in. Usually we feel wronged only in or our only intention is to get revenge. The other slogan, correct all wrongs with one intention, is trying to cheer us up and lighten up the situation and get some space. The one intention is to exchange oneself for others. This is the key. To correct all wrongs, one intention is to hear what is being said to the person, to see the person in front of you, and to be able to rest in not knowing what to say or how to act, and to wait and watch, or to watch and wait. Then, from your mouth comes something because the person in front of you is saying, well, what do you think? Or, I don't know. See if you've convinced me to do it your way, or they're just yelling at you. If simply to learn how to communicate were our lives challenged, not only might we be able to find food for people who are hungry and shelter for people who are homeless, but we might see the fundamental change, less aggression on the planet, more cooperation. We are different. We are different from each other. One person's ideas of what polite is someone else's idea of what rude is. In some cultures it's considered rude to belch after eating, in others it shows that you enjoyed the meal. What might smell repulsed to one person might smell wonderful to another. We are really different, and we have acknowledged that. But instead of going to war with our differences, let's play soccer. It's a strange game. Given our instructions to let others have the victory and to keep defeat for ourselves, it doesn't mean play to lose, it means play to play. And we can all play together. Even though we're on opposite teams. There are no big stakes, just playing. There are no different teams, otherwise the game won't work. But it doesn't have to lead into World War III or destruction of the planet. One of my favorite Dharmic teachers is Dr. Seuss. He captures human condition so beautifully. One of his stories starts with two people walking around on a narrow road when they meet, and they refuse to step on the other side to let each other pass. Everyone else builds bridges, even whole cities around them, and life goes on. But the two stubborn ones that stand there for the rest of their life is refusing to budge. It never occurs to them after 18 years that they could be curious about why they're refusing to move, or that they're trying to communicate. They could have had really big, interesting debates in all those years, even if they had still never moved. The point is that you're not trying to achieve harmony or smooth everything out. Good luck if that's your goal. The point is to live together on Earth with our differences. Communicate for your own sake. Communicate for its own sake. The process is the main thing. Not the frustration. If you achieve your goals with aggressive tactics, nothing really changes. Dr. Seuss tells stories about the Nietzsches, a superior race of one that everybody embodied. Hold on. The superior race, the ones that everybody aspires to be like, the ones that everyone hates, the star-belly Sneetches. They have their own stars. They have stars on their bellies, and everyone else doesn't. One very clever fellow knew how predictable these Sneetches were. So he came up with a big machine that puts a star on your belly. All Sneetches without a star on their belly rushed in and came out with a star on their belly, but of course the original Star Belly Sneetches, who still knew who knew still and how superior they were. They weren't thrown by this at all. But to facilitate this very predictable situation, and the same clever fellow came along with a new machine, by which you could also go get your star taken off. So all Star Belly Sneetches went to the machine and came out without stars on their belly. The superior ones became now the ones without stars. A, a clever fellow kept these two machines going. Sneetches were running in and out. The money was piling up. After a while, all Sneetches experienced senyata, but they didn't know who or what. They didn't know who was who, or what was what, or who was the Star Belly Sneetch, and who was a non-Star Belly Sneetch. So after a while, they had looked around without labels. They had just looked at each other without labels or opinions. Another slogan: train without bias in all areas. It's crucial to always do this pervasively and wholeheartedly. Train without bias is the trick. Train without bias, without labels. This is supporting the whole Toglin practice and teaching the Lojing teachings, which encourage us to see bias when it comes up and begin to connect with how painful it is, and to feel the prejudice, the restatements, the judgments. It's powerful. Compassionate teachings. It's powerful, compassionate teaching because it respects our intelligence and our innate good hearts. It begins to simply say, begin to see what you do, and don't necessarily try to change it, just see it. That's how things begin to change. When we say train without bias, the first step is to meditate on the bias when you see it arise. This is the same as always meditate on what provokes resentment. When one begins to be able to train meticulously and pervasively in all situations, often Toglin is taught exactly as this slogan describes, as a way of training pervasively and meticulously with everyone. You can also do this practice in any situation. You start with yourself. You can extend the practice to the situation in some way. Hold on. You can extend this practice to a situation in which compassion spontaneously arises. Exchange yourself for someone you want to help, then move to a slightly more difficult area. This slogan is saying you should extend this practice to everyone, pervasively, not inclusive, anyone. The more the practice out to, well, most commonly called neutral. These are probably the most frequent relationships you have, the people you never get to know and aren't even interested in. They're the ones who sit on the sidewalk and don't have homes, whom we walk past very fast because it's too painful. They are the ones who are also walking by very quickly. Begin to do the Toglin for the ones who we haven't noticed. When we encounter life situations that spontaneously invoke compassion, it's not necessarily to go through the 4 stages. It's fine to begin at the 3rd stage. the stage of breathing in the pain of the situation that confronts us and breathing out something that will help. It's fine to breathe in the pain and send out relief or love. There is no need to do the other parts. Flashing absolute bodhicitta or working with the black and heavy and hot and white and light and cool. These can be skipped in daily lives, but you do Toglin on the spot. The key to compassionate action is this: everyone needs someone there for them. Simply be there. A friend was severely burned and disfigured. Later, she was able to have plastic surgery to improve her looks, but there was a long time when it was difficult to look at her, and this was a time of instant isolation. The nurses would just pop in and out of the room and say cheerful things, and then they're as fast as they would get out of there as fast as they could. The doctors would march in and say efficient things like, look at her charts, but not at her. All who would encounter, hi. All who encountered her kept her at a distance because the sight of her was too troubling, too disturbing. This was even true for her family and friends because people made their duty calls. But there was some sense of not wanting to relate with this horror of this disfigured person. Finally, hospice came. Hospice people started to come, and they would sit and hold her hand and just be there. They didn't know what to say or what to do, and what she really needed, but they weren't afraid of her, and she realized that people really need other people, not to be afraid of them, to not distance themselves from them. That's what Toglin practice provides, a support for us. Just to be there with another human and try to communicate. Sometimes nothing needs to be said, nothing needs to be done. Then the deepest communication of all is to just be there. The practice goes further. We start with ourselves, extend to the situation where compassion naturally arises, or out further into the areas of neutral. Then we move to enemies. Be grateful for one. To be truthful, probably no one in this room is ready to do the Toglin for their enemy. Just the word enemy is the problem. A label with a lot of emotion behind it, a lot of anger behind it, and a lot of soft spot behind it. Basically, you have to start where you are with your loathing and whatever you feel, but with the aspiration to widen that circle of compassion. I've found that in my own history of working with this practice, awakening bodhicitta, and the circle of compassion widens at its own speed and widens spontaneously. It's not something you can make happen. It's definitely not something you can fake. But I guess there's a little bit of encouragement at least to try the experiment without faking it. Occasionally, by seeing what happens when you try to do the Toglin practice for your enemy, there's a lot of encouragement. Just to try this. There's a lot of encouragement just to try this and see what happens when your enemy is standing in front of you. And your intentionally bringing up the memory of your enemy in order to do the Toglin meditation. The Toglin. In the meditation hall, think of the simple instruction. What would you be able to communicate with my enemy? What would it take to be able to communicate with my enemy? What would it take to have my enemy hear what I'm trying to say? What would it take for me to be able to hear what he or she is trying to say to me? How to communicate from the heart in the essence of Toglin. How to communicate from the heart is the essence of the Toglin. Sorry, how to communicate from the heart is the essence of what Toglin is about. You extend even further to all sentient beings, which involves seeing this practice is extraordinarily vast. Of course, we could use this notion of all sentient beings to distance ourselves from the past, to make it more immate. Relative situations more abstract and far away. Someone said to me, in all seriousness, I have a very easy time doing the Toglin for all sentient beings, but I have a little more trouble doing it for my husband. Doing the Toglin for all sentient beings doesn't have to be separate from doing it for yourself or for your inmate situation. Immediate situation. The point that has been made again and again. When you connect to your own suffering and reflect that countless beings at that moment are feeling the exact same way as you do, you drop the storyline, but feel the pain in the same. When you do the practice for both all sentient beings and for yourself, you realize that self and others is not actually different. Okay, I lied. I said I was gonna read the rest of the book, but these other chapters are decently big. And by decently big, I mean like it's gonna take me a long time to read. And my mic literally died midway through this. So I have actually done this practice before. And this practice of like breathing in somebody's suffering and then exhaling something that you think might help, or just being there. And sorry, it was a very like a very moving experience for me, because I'm somebody who will stress and stress and stress about the future. And so me and this other person partnered up. We were in a teaching, and the teacher made us partner up with somebody else to breathe in their suffering and to exhale their healing, or like to exhale just being there, or like being worry free. Because most people, when they're sad about something, they're worrying about something. And so she had told me her thing, and I had breathed in all of that sadness and all of that worry, and I had exhaled healing energy, or like love. And she had done the same thing with me. And so we're supposed to share something that we're sad over, or like fearful about, or like something that causes us some type of pain, and something that was on our mind a lot, is what I'm guessing. And sorry if you could hear everything that's going on in the background, and also sorry for yawning. I'm like really tired. But then for me, I had told her, like, I'm fearful for the future. I'm fearful because I don't know if what I'm doing is the right thing to do. And in my experience, I had just sat there and just experienced, like, trying to receive the love that she was sending me. And so I laid there with my eyes closed, and then we both sat up, and she was like, "How was that?" And I'm like, "It was relaxing. I don't think that I was supposed to experience anything, and I can't tell you that I did experience anything." And then we had discussed what we had done for each other, like what we had thought about for each other. because I had told her, like, I'm fearful for the future, and her job was to just sit there and send me healing energy and do it in any way that she thought fit. And she was a Star Wars fan, which I've never watched Star Wars, but she had told me that there's a scene where this character has to trust the process so hard that they literally have to walk into nothingness, like just space. And as this character's walking into space, the ground is literally meeting his feet. So he's walking on literal nothingness through solid pieces of something. And when she told me that, like to this day, like it made me cry. And it makes it hard for me to speak, but that was one of the most moving things that I had ever experienced. And it was very, very powerful. Like, it really did help me process the fact that, like, I just need to trust that everything's gonna be okay. Which is kind of hard, but I think that helped me a lot, like a lot. And these practices, I also did one where you had to imagine somebody that you loved, somebody that was neutral to you, and somebody that you hated or your enemy, and do the practice of just being there with them and like just loving them unconditionally, even though you might not love a neutral person or an enemy. And I found it to be kind of easy, which I don't have any enemies, so that was already kind of easy for me. And even the people who have done me wrong and done me dirty, I still sit there, and think about like the good moments and think about the bad moments in learning ways. Like everybody really hates their exes and stuff, but I really don't. Like it's not that deep for me. I think it's a beautiful experience to have shared with somebody to be able to call them an ex. And most of the people that I've dated, like we have ended on good terms. Most. I'd say most except for the most recent one, but mm, it is what it is. Like I don't necessarily like hate anybody, and I don't think that anybody deserves hate just because everyone's just trying their best. And that was also something that you just come into the experience of when you have that experience. Like the person that I imagined that I hated was my dad because my dad is not a masculine figure and he's a very absent person. Like he's there but he's not. And that's that was something that was really really hard for me growing up because anytime that I wanted, to ask for something, I couldn't go to him. Or if I needed emotional support, I couldn't go to him because he wasn't in his um I guess feminine energy or embodying the feminine, let alone the masculine. And that was really hard for me growing up, so that was who I hated because he was not there. And slowly and slowly and slowly, I'd say it's taken me a couple of years to like move past those things, but now I see that like time really does change people and time really does heal because he's a completely different person than when I was a kid. And now I think that I'm at a point where I can see things for what they are and not make excuses, but also not want to change the situation, if that makes sense. Like a year ago, this is gonna get very personal, but like I'm a very like if you ask me, I'll tell you. And so like a year, almost 2 years ago, exactly, um, I had gone to work at a Buddhist retreat center, or actually it's only been a year. I went to go work at a Buddhist retreat center, and my little sister and my dad, they both have anger issues. Well, I'd say my whole family, like, that's what we struggle with, anger, because that's what we use the most. But they have a tendency to not be able to sit there and have space for themselves, to put it very clearly. Like, my mom can just sit there and be like, "Okay, you know what? It's fine. There's no winning or losing. You have made me feel bad, so I'm just gonna give myself some space. I'm gonna go on a walk or do something of that nature." And I don't even let them get to a point where they um anger me or trigger me just because I'm like, they don't even know what they're doing. And even if they do know what they're doing, it reflects a lot about them and not about me. So I don't have to worry about that. But before knowing that, I'd get really caught up in situations because I would take the things that my dad would say, I would take it so freaking personal. Like, he used to call me so lazy and like basically just call me like a deadbeat, that I'm not doing shit with my life. And then I had asked him to take me to this Buddhist retreat center, and on the way to the Buddhist retreat center, he was yelling at me, he was cussing me out, he was calling me stupid, he was just like verbally abusing me, basically. And in that moment, I was able to just sit there and be like, okay, you know what? This is not who I am. And it's not even who he really is. But obviously, I didn't feel that way at the time. At the time, I was like, this is him. He's just saying all these things because he feels them about himself. And the more that I sat with that experience, because that wasn't the only person who cussed me out and called me crazy for going to a Buddhist retreat center or like doing my own thing. Like, I always get backlash from, it's not even people that I would say as family, but it's always people who think they know what's best for everybody when, they themselves are very emotionally closed off. And I even talk about it on the podcast too. There was this lady who's not even related to me and would just badmouth me. And in those moments, I kind of broke down. Like, I had nothing mean to say to them back. When I had that experience with my dad, I couldn't do anything. Like, I was so angered and triggered in that moment that I couldn't even cry. And afterwards, it stressed me out. Like, it stressed me out. But in that moment, I was so freaking frustrated that I couldn't do anything about that. And then the lady that I'm talking about, she would badmouth me, like, directly to my face and, like, call me deadbeat, don't know what I'm doing with my life. Why am I letting the wheels turn? I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. That's something that I hear constantly. And I would just cry. Like, as soon as those moments would arise, I would just cry. And it would really upset me. And a lot of these episodes, they're basically me crying because that's what it takes to really get in touch with those soft spots in yourself, to recognize the soft spots in everybody else. And in moments where stuff like that happens, I kind of just let them happen and know that it's not necessarily like anybody's fault. This person, most of the time, the people who make me cry, I feel like they have a power over me. Like, I have a karmic history strongly with those people, because or else why would they make me feel like that? And I try to remember that most of the time people are just trying to do what they see fit, and it's not necessarily out of love and it's not necessarily out of hate, but they're just trying to do what they think they should do. And most of the time it's not even a conscious, like, I'm gonna do this to piss this person off, or I'm gonna do this because this person doesn't know what to do. And also I realized that, like, I'm being stubborn in the sense that they have those words because of something that I have done, and me not being able to communicate what I'm doing. Like, I don't tell my family that I'm uploading this every single day, I just do. And so to them, I seem to be the laziest piece of shit. I'm always in my room, and I don't talk to anybody, and all I do is go to work and then go home and then play my video games, so I'm the laziest person in the world, when in fact, I do so much to the point of mental exhaustion. And I think that there's really nothing that I can say. You know what I mean? Like, when those situations in my life arise, or when moments of um major major clashings that I have with other people, because most of the time that's just my human experience. You know what I mean? Like, I make mistakes. Sometimes I'm not going to communicate right. Sometimes I'm going to do things that are not really insightful or awake or aware of the situation, and I can't really blame myself because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I just got here, you know what I mean? Like, I just got birthed, and every single moment is another moment to try, and all I can do is try, but it doesn't mean that I'm gonna be successful all of the time. So I try to remember that, and when I was doing the, um the practice of sending love to the people that I hate, the people that are neutral, and the people that I love, the 2 people that I imagined that I hated were these 2 people who badmouthed me, and, who do these mean things, and I was able to sit there and be like, "They don't know what they're doing. They think that they're helping me, even if their help is just them crying out for help," if that makes sense. I've always been really attuned, or, like, aware that most people are acting out of their pain. Most people, they try to live through other people, and they say, "Don't do what I did," or "Do what I did. I am right." And those 2 people are no exception. So, when I had that when I was doing the practice with those 2 people in mind, and thinking about, "Oh, they hurt me, they wronged me, and blah, blah, blah," I thought back to, well, my dad was wronged. My dad was beaten as a kid, and that kid is probably just trying to express how hurt it is, and it doesn't know how to do that because it was never taught. I wasn't taught how to, do all the things that I wanna do. I can't blame him for not knowing, and for not being able to be in that feminine aspect of himself when his dad was straight up macho and didn't allow room for there to be any type of love. Like, my dad didn't like his dad almost until he died. I wanna say, like, maybe, like, 10 years before he died was when they started to have a good relationship. And same with this other person. This other person doesn't have the best relationship with their parents, and I imagine that's why they're not so much in their feminine, and who am I? I sat there and I was like, who am I to judge either of them? They had a hard life, and it's not that they're trying to make my life hard, and it's not that they're trying to hurt me. It's that they're doing what they think is best. Even if that does mean that in their best moments, they call me stupid and they call me all these different things. They're judging from their point of view, but they are not in my shoes. So I can take their judgments loosely and lightly and forget about the storyline and just sit there and understand that they're a human being and that they need love. And I'm not necessarily going to be the one to give it to them, but I can do my best to not do the opposite. Like, I don't like, there's been a decent amount of time when I was in high school. Let me start there. When I was in high school, I used to, like, literally cuss my dad out every single day because I was like, "Don't talk to me. I don't wanna talk to you." And it's that simple. Like, don't talk to me. Don't acknowledge my existence, I won't acknowledge yours. It's that simple. And now when he gets home, I say hi to him, he says hi to me, and before we weren't even able to do that because of me and because of how separate I made us, because I put so much blame on him for being absent. But I was just as absent in that specific relationship. And this other lady, I don't necessarily like talk to her, and she's not necessarily in my life, but for that reason, I really don't talk to her. I don't talk about her. And if I do talk about her, I won't mention her name. And, I won't even you know, I don't even let my family talk bad about her just because I don't think that that's the right thing to do. And, everyone's just trying their best. So when I do those practices, those are the two people that I think of because I'm not completely 100% over my own battles with not feeling good enough. And those are two people that make me not feel good enough. And well, that trigger that not good enough feeling. And slowly I think that time really does heal because if you would have asked me how I felt about those two people a year ago, I would have told you, "Oh, they're so mean to me. I feel so trapped, such like helpless when it comes to those two people." And now me and my dad get along fine. He still has his outbursts, and I still have my outbursts from time to time. But I think it's human to express your emotions. And I'm still learning how to communicate my emotions effectively before letting my feelings just get the best of me, if that makes sense. Like, I'm learning to communicate that I'm angry before I sit there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you don't fucking get it," and blah blah, blah blah blah, whoop de doo, whatever the fuck, like just screaming at the person basically. I don't know how to not do that yet. And I don't think that he knows how to do that either, especially because I was listening to him and my mom in the car, and he was just talking. And I was just sitting there experiencing my parents just existing. And he sounded like he was arguing, but he was just talking. Like the way that he was saying things, he was like, "But you don't but this would," like, really aggressively, right? And my mom was like, "Okay, you don't need to yell, like, it's not that serious, and I don't know why you're arguing with me. I'm not saying that you're wrong." And he was like, I'm just saying." And in that moment, I kinda, like, giggled to myself because I was like, "Oh, I get it now. This is what I do, I don't communicate." And it's also that he doesn't know how to communicate. And nobody can teach you how to communicate, especially because I feel like it's part of your natural rhythm after a certain amount of time. Like, if I continuously talked so aggressively, that was just my normal state of being, which it is for these people. It just is what it is, you know what I mean? Like, nobody can change that except for you, and if you don't even realize that you're doing that, you're not even going to notice how to change it, or that it needs to be changed, or if it doesn't need to be changed. And they have very authoritative energy, and that's what I realize. I don't deal well with authority because I'm stubborn. And now realizing that, I sit down and like I'll ask my dad, okay, like what should I do in this situation? Because usually authority figures have good leadership skills. Usually, not always, but I'll ask my dad what to do, and then I'll ask my mom what to do, because I think that it takes I feel like it takes both mom and dad to get really good advice, And even then, I really still sit there and think about it. But going back to the practice, I did this practice for these two people, and now I can sit here and like fully say that like I used to hate them, and now I don't. Like I don't even think that I really hated them then. I think I was just hurt to the point that I thought I hated them, or to the point that I thought I wanted to hate them because of how much it hurt for these two people that I love so dearly to sit there and point fingers at me and be like, you are dog shit. Especially because I'm younger than them, and they were people who raised me. And I think it's also having to do with people who raised me. Like, I look at them like they're superheroes, like they have all the answers, like they know everything. And then when you realize that they don't have the answers and they don't know it all, you kind of sit there and you're like, like it's so hard to, it was wrong of me to have put them on pedestals, but it was harder for me to take them off than it was to put them on. And it was heartbreaking to take them off of the pedestal. And that's what I realized through these practices. Like, I realized that most people are just trying their best. They don't really recognize that, they could be doing better, but you don't sit there and point that out, or else it just causes more pain. You know what I mean? Like, they sat there and they pointed fingers talking about, oh, you could be doing so much better, but you're not. And so I learned to not do that to them. And I learned to not do that in general. Like, when people come to me for advice, I can't just sit there and be like, oh, just do it. Because that's not how life works. And all the things that you think about and all the things that you go through are like extremely personal to you. And so I can only do so much to help. And anyways, I'm gonna end this here just because I've already ranted for way too long, and all I do on here is just rant away. And I don't think that these rants are that helpful. So anyways, thanks for tuning in and tapping in. As always, my babies, I love you and I appreciate you for being here. And without you, there would be no me. Without me, there would be no you. And yeah, we'll go over, I think it's chapter 20 or 19 tomorrow. 20. And it's called The Big Squeeze. And this chapter was called Communicate from the Heart. Okay. Anyways, thanks for tuning in and tapping in, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.